Okay, I believe we are live. Welcome everybody to the Way of the Truth Warrior. My name is David Whitehead. Super happy to be here with you. I've got a treat for you today. I hope you strap yourselves in, get ready. And we are live on Rockfin. Make sure you follow me on Rockfin. We're live on the Foxhole. Shout out to all my good friends, fellow patriots at the Foxhole. We've got D Live rocking. Hello to D Live. And today I am bringing the one and only Michael Tsarion on with you to cover some of the work that he's been doing on our project Unslaved. You can check that out at unslaved.com. Michael's been busy working in the background, producing premium presentations for our members over there. And he's just been knocking them out of the park. So today we're going to do an overview. And I called this episode World on Fire, because the time we're living in right now, we see all these events happening. We see this chaos happening. We see a mix of good, bad, ugly. Everything seems upside down. Everything seems in chaos. It feels like there's a greater divide than ever. Probably you're feeling that, experiencing that between your friends and your family. There's a battle of ideas, a battle of information. The ancients predicted this as like a spiritual war or a battle of the minds of men. And so we have to think about, where did all this come from? How did we get to this place right now where we're in the middle of this great battle that, yes, is happening in the world, but I'm sure all of us are all feeling this. All of you listening are feeling this internally, this struggle within. And so to get some context on history, on some of the amazing subjects that Michael covers, I wanted to bring him on to just give an overview of these really, really incredible presentations that he's been putting lots of hours into producing over on Unslaved. So without further ado, let me bring Michael on with me here. Michael, so good to see you, brother. Always glad to have you here. You've been super busy working on these incredible projects, and I'm really excited to dig into it with you here today, man.
Thanks. It's great to be on. Yeah, there's been a lot going on. And you're quite right about the sort of epoch we're going through. It's like no other epoch. So you either give up the ghost and just disappear off the scene, or you persist, which is the heroic way. I don't know any other way. Never think of giving up. It just doesn't enter my mind. Maybe that's a bad thing. I don't know, but that's the way it is. And we're getting a lot of support, more than ever, as well as the shadow banning and all of that. So the deplatforming, but that just gets my goat, makes me want to carry on even more. So.
Well, absolutely. And we've talked a lot about this before, you and I. We've been doing interviews for many years. Sadly, I lost some of them during the lockdown of my account, although I am getting them revived and I'm putting them over on my Rockfin channel. For anybody that's interested, you can catch some of them there. I'll be uploading more as we go. But Michael and I have been doing the Unslaved project since about late 2015, 2016. And we're over 260 something episodes over there with just some fantastic guests breaking down a lot of these different subjects. The one thing that I've found about what we've been covering there, especially because this is based on your work, Michael, is the unique angle that you take in your research. You're not a typical researcher. A lot of researchers sort of hone in on one or two points and they stick with it. And we need experts. We need those people that go in and they zero in on one or two things and they're really good at it. But you're, in my opinion, an expert on a lot of different points and the ability to sort of weave them together to build better context for people. We think about the current times that we're in. I've been covering a lot of current events, but as we've been saying on Unslaved, you can't look at those events without the context of history, philosophy, psychology, and yes, I dare say, conspiracy. And so you've been doing presentations on all of that stuff for many, many years. Maybe just for some of the listeners that are new to your work, I've got people that are new tuning in all the time. They're dying for the answers. Everybody's trying to learn what the hell's going on. Maybe just a brief background about yourself and what sort of led you to do this work way back in the day.
It's really not anything to do with decision making. I'm a bit of a conspiranoic, but that came from growing up in Ireland and seeing firsthand the level of lies. Everything I'm doing right now started back in the late 70s and 80s. The media hasn't changed. It's lying to you constantly. Every time you see a professor on from some university, he's lying. You can just turn off the volume and just watch the guy lie. Right? It's lies and lies and lies. And so today, it's no different. History Channel, whatever it may be, right? and the least you can say is that, okay, that they're still getting their facts wrong, because there's a lot of sequestering of information, say about the Nazis, say about the origins of Judaism and Christianity. So all I do is hobbies, right? They're to me fascinating subjects, but because then you have a social duty, and that's sort of a little bit is imposed on you. The moral person, the heroic person realizes, maybe I don't even personally want to do that, or write a book, or do something. But at the same time, it's sort of, you are part of society. It is a give and take. And didn't I stand on the shoulders of giants? So in some bizarre way, as much as one's own will may say, I want to go off and do something else, I don't know. It's there is a social duty. Let's just put it that way, and you can't sort of dodge it. And I've just played that out like an artisan. A ball starts rolling, right, or somebody throws you the ball. I just keep going right out of the stadium. It's my personality. They're going, dude, come back. You scored, but I just keep on going and going and going. So it's not really so. It's like there's an old saying that once you do a thing that many thousands and thousands of times, it owns you. You don't own it. I'm thinking here playing music or whatever. Where you just thought,
Yeah.
what's on the game, and you're playing, something amazing on the piano. It's kind of like that. It owns me. I don't remember the last time I willed anything. 30 years ago, maybe there was a bit of will going, I think I'll do this. Yeah, but my goodness, since I've become, in 1998 is when I first did first TV or whatever in the Bay Area. I can't remember even stopping to, at the water cooler. It's just been going on and on and on, almost like something's driving you. The work drives you. And I'm still waiting to have the pit stop or whatever they call it to say, what's happening here? How long have I been doing this or whatever? So it's just, it's like some crazy possession in a way, and I don't know. I don't know if it's this, that, or the other. I don't even have time to even think about it. That's the whole thing. The work is so demanding. I don't even have time to reflect on what am I doing, where am I doing it, who am I doing it to, and whether anybody gives a shit. So those are beyond me. All I do is I do it. That's all I know. It's incredible.
Well, that's incredible. I resonate with that because I feel that in many ways with the different things that I do. And we've talked about this many times about the difference between just having some job or some occupation or something to just kind of eat up the hours of the day versus your vocation, your calling, what they used to call the vocatio, which is something different. And many of the geniuses that you've gone into and really dissected their work, and then done this incredible array of mixing and matching. It's almost like a DJ, you're mixing different ideas into this framework to help bring context to people about a lot of these great subjects, clearing up a lot of the questions about mythology and religion, looking at the pros and cons, looking into the ancient world, looking into secret societies, looking into ancient cults. When we talk about, the origins of evil, I mean, that's kind of, I think, where you would have started, was asking that question, how does evil come into the world? Why are we still being preyed upon by these big governments and corporations and roundtables and Illuminatis or whatever? And then, as far as I know, that question evolved for you from just looking at them to, well, what is it in us that's creating that vacuum, that's allowing them to prey on us, allowing them to take control of the ship of state and destroy everything that was built with, I think, many good intentions. And getting that big picture is just so key. And once you start, you really can't stop, because once you know these things, and then you see everything that you've been trying to warn people about for decades happen, the spirit calls you to drive in, and instead of panicking, instead of getting very pessimistic, which many others in this field have done, and you can understand it, but you didn't just look at the facts and the history and the names and the dates and the Rothschilds and all that. You looked also at the greater picture of consciousness, the movement of time. You got a great new premium called The Moral Universe, just getting into that and keeping that positive, negative, yin yang balance in your work. Which I feel now, Unslaved is just getting better and better and better. This is what the members are telling us. So I think you've really just been, that fire inside of you is translating into your work, and it's really achieving an amazing result.
Yeah, well, there was a bit of a delay, partly because of the lockdown and equipment, so, but it's full speed ahead this last month or so. And the delay was not a bad thing because it helped me. Some of the programs have been in different forms before, and so to coalesce them, to arrange it better. I'm thinking here of Brotherhood of Death and maybe the Occult History of Ireland Part 3. You wouldn't believe how long that one sat on the shelf. And I'm not complaining, because now was the time to do them, and they came together real well, like you're in the mood. Something, they all fall into place. Because when I'm doing a particular premium or any kind of presentation, I like to have certain gems that I know aren't out there in anybody else's work. Well, a good deal of my work is like that anyway, but I go to the extra distance and saying, no, I know you won't find this in other people's work, but it's still a little bit lame. So I'm looking for even one knockout gem that I'm like, oh my God, that's it. And I've been lucky to find them. And this time found them in, plenty. So those came together real well. Yeah, the other ones that come together, I don't release it. That's why they're taking time, because I won't release it unless it has those knockout gems, something that's like, whoa, that's not been disclosed before. And I know that. So then that's, to me, what's satisfactory about the work that I do. And that's not about, that people are going to respond. It's just that I need to feel that if I was to watch this back again, and when it's up, I'll be like knocked for six. Wow, we never thought of that before. We didn't make that connection before. So everything is done in this sort of needlepoint way with great precision. And I'd rather undo the whole thing and go back to, basic, and do it again and again and again, just to make sure that it's got that little bit of a zing in the work. That really, because a lot of people watching us are seasoned, and they have trawled the net, and they have read, and they've heard me before. So it's like, come on. And I don't fool people. Every single one of those presentations, although there's a component of previous work that we're going over, like a recap. Every teacher, every lecturer does that, to recap where you've gone. But every single program that we're doing has that extra nugget, which I don't think has been revealed before, and that's why I really trust and believe in it.
Yeah, that's awesome, and you can really see it. This is why I love working with you on this Unslaved project. It's been an honor to do that and bring that out, and very grateful for all the members that have supported us with that project. We got taken offline years ago before it was cool, and so we made a custom site, a custom membership site, which we've just upgraded, and we're slowly moving people over. So go make sure you check it out at unslaved.com. That's where all of your work is housed now. It must feel good for you to not have to have everything kind of scattered all over the web, where you have it all organized in one place. It's almost like a museum of collected works that you've added your own flair to, and put your own writings and works into. And now you
Yes,
just
it
have
is.
one place for everything to be in so people can check it out.
That, and also that the people, like Chance Garton, yourself, I'd rather have that format than a bunch of nitwits that used to have to, for the last 28 years, who
Yeah.
know nothing. I mean, just face it, right? And even the ones who are good guys, we were on dial-up internet. Check that out. We were on telephones. I was yelling till I was going, hoarse. It's so awful when you listen back to some of those. And it's just, that's not the platform. If you did a slide, it was in 3:4 ratio or worse, right? I mean, Jesus, the learning curves, and that's all right from one point of view, because at least I was doing it as rudimentary and as it was, and whatever technology there was, and all of that. But no, for me, the information requires better technology, so now we got widescreen, we got better resolution, better audio, so this is, of course, absolutely key to it, because you need the right stage in a way. We're never going to, get, the mainstream doesn't want to know. So then we have to do the next best thing under the radar. But I'd like to do it at a higher quality. So, and I have, we did Origins and Oracles way back when. I tried to do that with the latest technology that was available then, right? And then you move to the next and the next and the next. So that's kind of interesting too. Same with the websites. Just last year, I was able to, I got about 14 different websites, but a lot of them had been, some pages had been sitting there. Some sections of these websites had not been completed. They were page holding, and they had some good information on it, but there was reams and reams of other stuff to come. Last year, I got it all done. So the lockdown, helped me just say, right, as you say, coalesce a lot of material that was stunted. A lot of books, had to be hand typed. Most of that, like my astrotheology side, that's all hand typed out from other people's work. Days and nights of backbreaking work, but it got done. So I like to see that. You start something, you maintenance it for a while, as long as it takes, and then you bring it to completion. To me, there's something really profound about that, like writing a song or a piece of music.
Yeah, that's incredible. And you do also, you have music, you have a music website, you do some incredible guitar work, and putting that, I think that call of the artist right now is really important. And I wanted to bring you on to talk about some of these elements that you've been working on, these projects you've been working on, because there's a lot of people that are just waking up now. Maybe everybody's at different points in the journey, but a lot of people, because of this lockdown, the government will say, oh, it's provided an amazing opportunity for us to create a centrally controlled world government and micromanage your life. But for us, we're like, well, you know what? Then it's given us an amazing opportunity to help enlighten the world about you motherfuckers,
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you've been studying these people, these agencies, organizations, these cults, these religions. You've been studying it your whole life. Your research is second to none, in my opinion. And so I wanted to have you come on and just help give some history to a lot of the subjects that are becoming very vogue. People are talking about the Vatican. This is becoming popular. They're talking about the Jesuits. They're talking about the Masons. They're talking about the secret society. They're talking about the UN, the World Economic Forum. You got Klaus Schwab and Greta Thunberg, and people are noticing these things. They're noticing their governments are not listening to them. They're just following orders and reading scripts. People are really getting into the banking industry. They're getting into, in America, we're on a platform right now where there's a lot of American patriots listening, and Canadian, people from all over the world really that are wondering, how do we save our country? What's going on? What went wrong? And so as that happens, people go online and they read forums and they watch videos, and there's a lot of great stuff out there, but I feel like we need to go back to those that have come before. And not only have you been in this for 30, 40 something years, Michael, you've also referenced and worked with those that have been doing this for even longer and are even dead and gone. You've referenced their works to help educate the people that are just waking up to this idea of a global conspiracy or criminal history of humankind, where we went wrong in academia, what's up with all this far left craziness with Antifa and the fourth wave feminism and all these subjects. It seems to be coming together, and people are starting to realize behind the veil are really the same organizations, institutions, and people that are driving it all. So maybe we should start. You've got some amazing slides prepared. Where's the best place that you think you'd like to begin and just sort of breaking some of that down and what you've been presenting lately on Unslaved?
Yeah, well, as I said, two of them were reprises of stuff that had been done before, and they were beautifully updated. A lot more reading had been done since the first incarnation of those shows, like Brotherhood of Death. They were good before, but I wanted to add those nuggets, and those come out of somebody like the work of Ralph Ellis, for instance, has had key parts, and it's helped me reframe everything I've known. So there are some living, can you believe it? Actually, guys living today that are the great giants we stand on. Most of them are gone, passed away. So, and Ralph would be almost number one on that list, perhaps to reframe pieces that I already had, but they just weren't fitting properly. There was a lot of gaps. So Brotherhood of Death took on an extra oomph because of that. Other reading as well. And I've always wanted to, right back, if people go back to 2004, I think it's like, yeah, it's probably even, well, if it's not 2004, then it's 2006, the Origins of Evil talk. And in that talk, I showed a picture of the pyramid with the truncated pyramid, said, who's at the top? And that was to iterate that is my major concern. So where other scholars are talking about this, that, and the other, I like to keep the focus on the, that missing capstone or the removed 14th cap level. Who are these people? We need to get a forensic profile on them. And that's been what I've done. And Ralph Ellis obviously has the same idea, although he's not strictly a conspiracy theorist. It doesn't matter, though. It all comes out in the wash. His work is absolutely fundamental to the story of Jesus, the story of the old world, because we all know that Judaism came out of, we all know that Christianity came out of Judaism, but not 1 in a million people can tell you what Judaism is. Half the Jews today are atheistic or Gnostic or Hermetic, or there's even some, believe it or not, we've had guests on to say, anti-Semitic Jews. Yeah, that's the nugget. Who's talking about? Right? Oh, I know about that. You don't know. But if you go back into the depths of Judaism, an amazing story unfolds, and that's where Ralph Ellis has, in his youth, he started asking that question, which impacts Christianity, and then other questions arise from that. So in Brotherhood of Death, I wanted to show that the fourth sect that he's exposed is still around. It had a great enemy. This is just a thumbnail sketch. It had a great enemy in the shape of the papal Rome, the St. Paul shrink wrap simple Judaism concept that took hold. Everyone liked it. The lowbrows went for it, and they built Rome, and they had Constantine and the Council of Nicaea and the Council of Trent, and this is where what we know today to be Christianity came from. But in it is Persian Mithra worship. In it is Zoroastrianism, Sol Invictus. Did I say Mithraism? Yeah, Ahura Mazda. Serapis. The thing is extraordinary in the sense of it's based on henotheism. They were grab-bagging from everywhere, this Constantine. So, okay, and then Judaism, and then we have Gnosticism. But in the Brotherhood of Death, what I wanted to always point out is that they haven't gone away. That fourth sect, their bodyguard and their army basically was the Knights Templar. And so the way it goes like this historically, which is never accepted by mainstream historians, but we know what they're made of, after the classical era, capital C, you can look it up on an encyclopedia, the classical era, which is basically Rome, and before that the Greek paradigm, right? Imperial, but also mercantile, the gods, so it's theology. Everything that constituted the city-state, as was known in Greece and Rome, had faded by the 9th century. About 100, 200 years later, that's when you're getting the rise of the Knights Templar, right? 10th and 11th century. So very, very quickly on, from the death of one entire worldview, like one of the most dominant, these are massive empires, that their way, it's not fading completely. I mean, we still have Roman buildings and Roman roads, but in a sense, it was in its twilight. So what do the royal families do at this point? There's a change just right there in the 9th and 10th century. So just focusing in on that, you start to say, what was happening around then? Well, the royals of the world were taking on a new aspect. There was a tad more individualism. There was a tad more independent activity. And then, of course, you have the greater things like the Merovingians in France, right? And then these Knights Templar. So there was a major change at that point where these secret societies really started taking hold. And so I take it sort of from there, and even earlier periods, to show that this group, the fourth sect, the Black nobility, the Black Lodge, and then their guard, their army, the Knights Templar, continued going. Yeah, but they didn't, because when the 14th century came, about 300-400 years later, their enemies, the papacy, suppressed them. The famous suppression of the Templars, right? So common you don't even need to mention it. Yeah, but then that's where the history of the Templars ends, just like they always try to tell you the Illuminati faded by the 1800, all that's nonsense.
Right.
They try to tell you the Templars were finished by the 14th century. No, a group of people that ran their empire already in the many thousands, because there was only about, 10,000 actual knights, and none of them could read and write. They were to all intents and purposes illiterate. But they had literally an army of clerics or clerks or whatever, or exons that had already been running their empire, from the armor to the horses, like I said, the reading and writing. Because if one Templar wanted to communicate with another, he had to have one of these clerics write what he said and then read the response in Latin. They were completely ignorant. So this is forgotten. All right. So 50 Templars.
Is this the Cistercian order? Is this where that comes in?
No. These guys would be very much akin to the Cistercian order.
Okay.
Right? They're brothers in arms in many ways. But these are servants of the Templars. There's no real name for them. I just call them the clerks or the clerics or the exons. If you look up the word exon, it means page. It's like we all know the word page, like a king and a queen have their pages. An exon is just a higher level page, and so that's the word for them. And if you go to the first slide, you actually see two of their. That's why they're still around, because my whole theory in Brotherhood of Death is they're still around. See that cap? I don't know if it's very clear. He's wearing a double cross on the front. That's where we get the word double cross from, and there it is more clearly. Yeah, that's a Knights Templar emblem, the red cross, but it's double, because this is their exons, and that's called the X, or the double cross. And around the badge, it says, in this sign, conquer. So this is a very, very powerful, because I deal with the people at the top, remember, the world's greatest secret societies. So the Scottish Rite have adopted this. So Scottish Rite, they're telling you quite clearly they're solar, they're Atnist, there's the sun rays in the badge, and they're Templar, and that they serve the Templars, where there's 2 bars. Go to the next one. One could talk endlessly about these organizations, but just to quickly show, so when you see a corporate logo with that sort of double X, and we all know the Cross of Lorraine, which is a massive royal dynasty, that was in with the Templars, and there's a Scottish Rite Freemason with the Exon. So these are Exons.
Wow.
They'll never tell you themselves, but everyone's seen, what is it, Scott Rite hospitals, Scottish Rite drugs pharmacy, and you've seen Exxon, the Exxon, the petrochemical company, and you'll see this symbol on many, many other corporate logos. In fact, coming to Templars, if you see a shield, Templars were warriors, weren't they? Right. Don't you see a Templar symbol on the Daily Express newspaper in England? Don't you see BP, another petroleum organization, with the shield?
Yeah.
Didn't we have green shield stamps and all of that? So the blue shield in America. Let me tell you, the very fact that you see a shield at all on any logo, that is Exon. Those are the clerics. So the Templars are still running today from the old world, meaning that the Templars did not disappear in the 14th century. They did. They had to go underground, but nobody ever brought one of their Exons to trial. And their colors, David, was brown and green, or golden green. There's actually a place in London called Golders Green. People who are living there will know that. So golden green, brown and green is the symbol of these clerics. It's just things to look for, right? Little trails, little footprints. And this is what I wanted to bring to bear, that the Templars are the world's greatest secret society. There are ones above them, but they're more shadowy, but at least the ones that people would know. The ones that people would know. The Knights Templar have not gone away. And their main group that served them, that I believe are their lieutenants, are housed in Rome now, and they're called the Knights of Malta, the Sovereign Order of the Knights of Malta. It used to be called the Knights Hospitallers. They were a cousin to the Knights Templar. Well, when the Templars got suppressed, many orders of clerics were given, scrolls, given the reins of the empire, money, right? The famous one where they all took it to Scotland and all that's all well known. But the story is even more fascinating than that. And the Knights of Malta, who used to be in the Mediterranean and then moved several times as years went by, centuries went by. Napoleon sort of, didn't like them, so they had problems there and had to flee. But basically they coalesced, and their addresses in central Rome to give the impression that they're Roman Catholics. Well, the Knights Templar have given people the impression that they were Roman Catholics. In other words, that's why the papacy suppressed them. And the Knights of Malta, who are their clerical servants, are no more Catholic just because they live in Rome under the shadow of the Vatican City. No, they control Vatican City. They're the grey popes and the black popes who run the white pope. The white pope, you see. This is how it works. So these orders are still around. And so Brotherhood of Death, that was that mandate, is to try and say, you are still with these people are still around. They haven't gone anywhere. They're very, very powerful. Let's talk about them and their history and their rivals. They have rivals as well. There's work I'll be doing on the Thule Society, coming up and things like that. Great. Speculate that they had rivals. Maybe the Teutonic Knights, or maybe they all merged together. See, the thing is that there's no one person can really know for sure. There's a lot. These are secret societies. Their presence may not be secret, but what they do behind their large door is. And therefore, you now have to rely on 3 things, which I think is central to my work. One is etymology, the meaning of words. We just saw a sort of example there in a way. Symbolism and secret society iconography. And the work that you said that I've done all these years, if you stick close to those, you can't go wrong, because these guys strangely like to share in some bizarre ritualistic way. They actually do reveal a lot, both in writing, but also mostly in the symbolism and etymology. So I've always found that if you follow those trails, you don't actually go wrong, and you can get an insight, into who's running everything from the top. And that's what those programs are really all about.
And that's a really interesting thing, isn't it? That they like to boast about it, or is it arrogance, or is it that they feel that that's what gives them the carte blanche to do what they want with the world, as long as they have told you, even though it might be through movies or symbols or whatever? Or is this just they're so deeply into the ritual magic element of it that this is part of them sort of casting their web? Is that there has to be a certain level of subconscious disclosure, not conscious, but it's got to be the subtle sort of Fabian way of doing things, and that's what maybe gives them what they believe is their right to rule as the vicars of the gods. What do you think about the reason as to why they like to just put it out there like a bunch of gangs putting out their gang signs all over the place?
Well, that's interesting because I think that it's because they are students of symbolism.
Mm,
But see, we were just talking there about history, a thumbnail sketch. To understand the answer to that question, you have to see how they see history. They're
right.
standing on the balcony and they see history, and we read history, and we get into a way of looking at history. But we're down there, we're in the mud, we're these little maggots to them. They are history, they think to themselves. So you study history as an objective subject. We are history, they think. So what we would normally call that megalomania, just in case anybody missed it.
Yeah.
These are the megalomaniacs. They don't see history like us, right? They play a geopolitical game. Sure, there's, like you said, this World Economic Forum creature, right? And this horde, this Klaus Schwab. There's one in plain view. And they look at the swathe of history and the movement of history as if they're Caesars or something. And they can fiddle well Rome burns, and they're doing it right now again. But that kind of megalomaniacal view is why they do it. Because yes, it's very ritualistic, and they do want to know that, who's in charge. They want you to kind of know who's in charge. They do have a lot of window dressing. They do use a lot of intrigue, obviously. They leave false trails. So it's also I deal with in the programs to really give people a crash course so that they don't fall for all of this. But they also do bizarrely use their symbols. They've even designed cities, whole cities and towns in the shape of, a skull, for instance. So you're never going to crack why they're actually doing it. It's part of the rituals. It's part of the way they're brought up. So then the same way that a general or colonel will wear all of the military gear and the awards that he's won, in some strange way, they do the same thing, and they have a great deal of they assign enormous significance to certain symbols. The symbol of the sea, the symbol of moving water, well, the Holy See, moving water, right? Currency, like banks of the river, and money is currency, and all of and why they in their temples are always very close to water, like all the houses of parliament, for instance. And if they're not near an actual river, they'll make these weird pools and fake designer rivers or symbols of water flowing.
Or the
They'll have these
fountains.
bizarre
Yeah.
fountains. Yes, exactly. In Vatican City and all these corporate centers. So they have attached, and it's the old story of being hidden in plain sight. You, me, we've learned to look at it, right? The masses of the world think it's just decoration. They have no clue what you're talking about. And even if you put their noses in it and said, what does that mean? Right? Where did that symbol come from? I don't know. Right? And that's where they're at. So it's really, really, incredible when you get into it. Like, what is a fountain? Did you know that Bernard de Clairvaux's family name was Fontaine? The Knights Templar master leader, in fact, the creator of the Cistercian order you just spoke of, his family name was Fontaine. Now, do you know why there's fountains everywhere? It's a Templar symbol. You know why there's big phallic objects all around you that you don't see? Because phallic worship is alive and well. Maybe we'll get to that in a minute. That was more to do with the Gnostic program. The part 1 has been out this week, and part 2 is coming. But Gnosticism and phallic worship and pagan rites, if you were only able to open your eyes and decode, what's been going on, it really would be, and it's right there in plain view in a lot of the advertising and the ad copy, the billboards, the magazines. So in many ways, I think that here's why one of the reasons I like to do this is because you see the spell that we're under and the hex that we're under in regards to this ritual breaks the moment you know what you're looking for. The moment that you see what they're doing, they have lost their power over you. And to me, that's it's a good kick up the arse for them. They lose if you are able to see colors, symbols, motifs, and you're able to work it out or know the history of it. I think that's highly empowering. So in many ways, I think that's one of the thrills that I get out of doing these programs.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because we've also talked on the individual level of how to understand what the self is, how that relates to nature, spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, and how when you bring something from the unconscious or subconscious to the conscious, where it was there, but you actually brought it to your reasonable center, then it makes sense, and now you're aware of it, right? Something has come to your awareness. Like the world is getting a crash course in right now, where a lot of people, they're messaging me, they're like, a month ago I was going to go sign up and get this vaccine, and I thought this was the most deadly plague since the Spanish flu, but then I started just paying attention, and I watched a video, or I watched one of your shows, or I read an article, and I saw something that just, a cascade of realization hit me, that everything I've been believing was a lie. And that's that process many of us listening right now have gone through at some point in the journey. But that's the process of, it was always there. The subconscious, the spirit, it views everything, it records everything. And then when you bring it with that realization of eureka, oh my God, it's been right there the whole time in front of my face. That's that moment of realization. So in a way, what you're describing is just on the macro level of how this symbolism works and impacts you. And when you become aware of it, it loses the hypnotic spell. It'd be like if you're on a stage with a hypnotist and you go up there and you just allow yourself to get into the Kool-Aid and do the whole thing, then you'll go along with the dance. But if you go there with awareness and critical thinking, you can't be hypnotized, right?
Yeah, it's the same thing if you were in a crowd watching a concert or Punch and Judy show, and you knew the pickpocket has his hand in your pocket. It's nothing more than that. These are deceivers, they're megalomaniacs, their agents are very powerful and very wily. You wouldn't believe how efficacious these clerics were for a start to infiltrate. And they didn't find it easy, because there was a lot of very right-wing. See, I forgot to mention the Fourth Sect and Templars are very, what we would call politically left-wing. They're actually the ones today behind this rise of the left that you spoke of. But remember, they had the enemy in the real papacy. I'm no fan of that, by the way. I'm just giving you the history sketch. The right-wing papacy was much more conservative and fuddy-duddy and and doctrinal and literalist, that tradition. Yeah, well, they finally overcame them in the 1860s or the 1890s. And then they set to work through the rest of the 20th century. If you want to understand the 20th century in terms of secret society, you understand that this was it. It was a move now that after overcoming a great enemy, they breathed a sigh of relief, they partied, and they went, right, now to the second order concerns that we have. Other bizarre little orgs. And we don't care if they're in the East with the Ishmaelis or mostly in the West with all of these other secret societies. And this impacts Germany, and it impacts Britain. You've heard of the Vril Society, right? And all of that, and various orders of Freemasonry. I can't quite think right now, but these clerics set their eyes on saying, we need to infiltrate them. And the ones that we can't infiltrate, we'll destroy. So the 20th century is a time of incredible upheaval. So when the masses, Hitler, Mussolini, they see that action on the top. They don't see the undercurrents of the secret societies absolutely at war. And the orders that were already established, and many of them were benign. I know people don't like that, but they were relatively benign. Let's just agree on that. I don't like secret societies any more than the next person, but we've got to understand something, that there were sort of secret societies that gathered that were patriotic, nationalistic, and relatively speaking, humanitarian. They didn't mean any bad, and they were thinking about the best that they could do for their societies, right? You may argue about how they went about that and all of the efficacy of that, but they weren't that particularly bad. And some of them were just old boys networks as well. There was just nothing more than that. But this group of the Fourth Sect needed to, by policy, overtake them. And the ones that they couldn't overtake, they would destroy. So you're dealing with a very wily group of people, because that's not easy. Because some of the people that you're trying to overthrow know your presence. They're not that. It's like the military thinking of a spy. These people were kind of aware that they were being overthrown and wrote about it. That's how I found out about it, because they're writing about, in the 1800s, even people as supreme as the Emperor of Europe was writing about this. The top dukes. Why, you can't put that down to just accident. At the rise of the Illuminati, there was warnings going out from Captain Morgan in America and John Robinson in America. and the others that I mentioned in the Brotherhood of Death, including George Washington, authentic writings. And other journalists and lesser minds and writers were warning and warning and warning. So this group is very wily. They're serving their masters. The masters couldn't operate anymore. Their names were known and they were under scrutiny, so they had to sort of die away and pretend they didn't exist. Going to Ireland, going to, and as you saw in Brotherhood of Death, the very White House is patted on the Templar Lodge in Dublin. So there's a coincidence for you there, mate. Pass the Guinness.
Well, and then the obelisk and the whole
All of it.
David Oveson work of the city layout and the stuff that we went into with Scott Onstad from Secrets
Right.
in Plain Sight.
Right.
That kind of symbolism and architecture doesn't just happen by accident.
No.
It's not just done for aesthetic reasons. The people that have the money and the power to build stuff like that during that period of time where most people were just serfs and illiterate, as you said, they did it with purpose. They did it with intention. They know, we've talked before about the Templars and these orders, how they have knowledge of the ley lines and the salt lines of the earth. They understand how to position their castles, their monuments, their political houses, their money houses on certain nodal points that, hey, whether a person believes it or not, who cares? It's good enough for them. They believe it. They align things with astrological constellations and things like that. So when you catch on to this and you study it, you can actually learn about the minds of these psychopaths. And from a Sherlock Holmes point of view, when we're sitting here trying to do a forensic analysis of how the hell did we get into this mess? That's a very valuable skill. And that's why I hope more people come over to your work and get into the work of the people that you cite, because it will help people learn how to spot these predators and spot it by looking at what you said, the etymology, the symbolism, the iconography, and then getting into the boatloads of quotes, authentic quotes that you've dug up for years, from not just some low-level people and a journalist here and there, but like high-ranking politicians, statesmen, dukes, royalty, insiders, whistleblowers, masons, priests. It's coming from everywhere. It's so undeniable. Yet here we are today, even after what we've just experienced through the past 14 months, where people still sit back and kind of scoff at it. But I guess some people are beyond saving anyways. This is for the people that are serious about learning the truth about this.
Completely. And it's authentic. That's what convinced me. One of the reasons I carried on is because I knew it was coming from the highest brow people, some of them that I respect very much, and others I don't respect, but I know that for personal reasons, they didn't want their orders to be overtaken, so they wrote about it, or they leaked it, hoping for the best. The Bavarian government and even the local prince who crushed the Illuminati in Bavaria wrote 24 letters or something about the Illuminati's presence and sent it to all his brethren, royal families in Europe. Those are on record. And I don't remember him saying in one of those, oh, they're all over and done with, like we do today in the 20th century. He was warning his fellow royals, because watch out, they're going to try and recruit you. They're still busy. We just suppressed them here in Bavaria, one small place, right? In Germany. Yeah, well, what about the rest of Germany? What about Austro-Hungary? What about Britain? What about Russia? So the men who knew about the Illuminati never once ever wrote about them disappearing. But today, plonkers in the 20th century are going to tell you there's no such thing as Illuminati. Didn't we just mention people from the 10th century, the Knights Templars and the Hospitallers? The Knights Hospitallers, who are sitting on the United Nations today as we speak, are the oldest society in history. Older than the Templars and older than the Cistercians. The Cistercians being way back as well. The Knights Hospitallers that became the Knights of Malta are older. Don't let that confuse you when I said that they became the clerics later on. That was just in-house decisions, when the Templar wealth was handed over. But the actual fact is that the Hospitallers started before, and they were called Hospitallers because they did what? Open hospitals. Well, that to me it sends a shudder up my spine. That's not a very good thing, because these guys were mendicants. They were apothecaries. Let's see where that road would lead you. You're talking about, today's lockdown and the people behind it. Yeah, the Club of Rome, ever heard of them? The Club of Rome is run by the Knights of Malta, and they are apothecaries, and they do know all about you from a medical point of view. And that's why they've wheeled this out. It's one of the old secret society techniques. Check these people. Hostel, where does that word come from? Hospital, hotel. Where do those words come from, and what do they represent? Do you know they represent a secret society? That's why the doctors used to wear the white robes forever. And you go to St. Mary's or whatever and look at the symbolism. Just look at the symbolism. Scottish Rite hospitals all over America. Shriners. You know who the Shriners are? I mean, what? So I didn't. When some nitwit starts saying, "You know what you're talking about, you're a conspiranoic," I go, "You dead right I am. Thank you for letting me know." You are the plonker. You are like comedy. You are the one who's going to go down, and you'll just hear, "Did I hear a bang?" And it's over. If I am to go down, at least I'll know, right? Why? And better still, I want to do something about it. So, it's actually in plain sight. This is the most bizarre thing. Like I said, if you see the shield, there's a shield on the dollar bill. There's 13 arrows and 13 leaves, and an eagle. Anybody know that relates to the tribe of Manasseh? That isn't even one of the 12 tribes. It's like a sort of a split-off tribe with Ephraim. What on earth would an old Judaic symbol from old Judah be doing on the American $1 bill?
Yeah, let alone a pyramid or all this Egyptian stuff.
And all of that. You've got Judaic, and you've got 13 stars. You've got this, pyramid. It's a very odd pyramid, and the eagle. And where does all of this come through? You see, so I've always had an inherent love of symbolism and etymology and all of that. So I'm doing this because that's vocational. I love discovering where those things come from. I would have been doing it on my own, but I would have been doing it very, very slowly. When I got to visited America several times, but when I finally got there for my longest stay in 1990, that was Desert Storm. And so I would be going to work on the bus or waiting at the bus stop, and I'd run into these Vietnam vets and older guys who, had mental problems, so to speak. They were part of the VA hospitals in the area, in Palo Alto and in San Jose. And they get talking to me, and they pull out these dollar bills and start telling me things that I never knew anything about. So on my education, I was into these things in a sort of a vague, amateuristic way. It would have led nowhere, I don't think. It really was going at such a slow pace. But the moment that I got into the States, there was the bookstores, there were the books, and there were these Patriot bookstores, and where it just went on steroids. And through some of these people who were very vocal at that time, they said, "Oh, have you read this and have you read that?" And that's how I started hearing about the various teachers, starting with people like Nord Davis and people, the Reverend Moore, you see, and moving from that point on to your Eustace Mullins and George Griffins and all of that. It was a slow journey through. Ralph Epperson would have been one of the early ones. We've had him as a guest on. Jesus, yeah, you need to strap yourself down for what he's got to tell you. An Unseen Hand and all of that. World Order, his books, let alone what Eustace Mullins comes along with. See, so what I always believed was, and Lieutenant Colonel Bolg writes, you put your arms around all the information you can. You haven't sifted it yet. So there's this, and it's a big muddle. It's a big mess. Jesuits, Jews, Knights Templars, right? Whatever you've got, UFOs, and all sorts of ancient aliens and all sorts of interpretations. So then what do I do? Is I'm a novice. I get all the information I can around me as much as I can. I collate it. I bring it together, and then I slowly, methodically start going through it. And I must develop my intuition. I can't rely on this guy confirming that guy, because often they don't confirm each other. In fact, they can even contradict each other, which is why people give up. I read 10 books. They're all disagreeing on who it is and what it is. That's called variation, mate. That's not contradiction. Because the cat that we're trying to stalk in the long grass is way beyond you in intelligence. Right. It smells you 100 miles away before you come to it. So it's laid traps. It's laid false paths. It misdirects. It owns the publisher. One of the biggest things that these clerics own, other than petroleum companies, is publishing and journalism. Right. By the way, they even stamp their shit right on it. Right. So Fleet Street, yeah, the one that's just down the head from the temple, from the headquarters of the Templars. So all of this goes without saying. So you have to then create what the masses cannot create, and that is a different kind of discrimination, a different kind of gauge or calipers to be able to, like you said, Sherlock Holmes, sit through and say whatever is impossible can be eliminated, right? Leaving, or it's like, what does he really say? It's through the painstaking process of elimination that you separate the untruth from the true, and you're left with the truth.
Right.
And this is what a lot of people cannot do this. Scientists always claim ad hoc that they do this, but that's a whole other debate. My feeling is they don't. They're not as deconstructive as they think because they're working within a paradigm. All they do is they deconstruct that which supports their paradigm. It's not quite what I'm talking about. I'm talking about paradigm busting. How many people will, don't bust my paradigms? I'm a Catholic, I'm a Protestant, I'm a conservative, I'm a Labour. Oh, you are you? Right. Then you're Joe Puppet. And you are on strings, boy. And you don't care to know who's pulling them? Ah, sure, I don't care about that. As long as there's, gruel and cushions and chains of gold, sure, I'm very satisfied. Just me then be satisfied. Right? But I'm trying to liberate the mind from its mind-forged manacles. I don't like to be controlled or told what to do, even if it is chains of gold. Just because they've decorated my cell, no, I'm not happy. I know there's a big, wide world out there to be free in. And here we are again. People still trusting the media and people still saying government's a good thing. After 2020, how dumb can you get? See, all our conspiranoics now are having a party. We are vindicated. We are all caps vindicated. Bold, flashing, and underlined. Right? Vindicated. So that's a big zeitgeist change, actually. A lot of people will try to pretend they didn't notice that. Oh, no. Let me remind you one more time. Sane conspiracy people have no more defense to be offering nitwits. Everything that's happened in the last 5 years, not just in 2020, but since Mr. Trump, decided to run for president, every single thing that a sane there are boogaloo ones out there, but everyone that the sane, methodical, studious ones have said has been more right than vindicated. To quite an extraordinary extent, where anyone who's sane and generous and unbiased must give conspiracy people, the clever ones, a great deal of, and so we're past that point, and that's a good thing. So we can move on to the next step now. And that's what I've done in my work, is intensify it. In the past, it was chopped up, small for other people with things like architects of control or post-human world or whatever. And now, no, I'm assuming that people are up to speed. That's what Unslaved is all about, that it's only going to be joined by people who are up to speed and can match you, say, no, I'm with you, mate. You don't have to cut it up too small. And that saves me from having to do that. All right, we plow on then to the real meat and potatoes of the work. And to me, that's a very interesting story, because as I say, we're going up the pyramid to the highest part. Yeah, well, what happens at the highest part of a mountain? You have an incredible vista now of the world reality. Forget about the thing about secret society. Just your vision of reality, of history, is so much more impactful. And there's 4 sides to a pyramid. Right, so that means there must be more than 4 subjects: psychology, sociology, secret societies, symbolism, politics. There's many facets to the view. But the higher you go up above the cloud line, now there's no way that I would ever stop, because of the incredible insight that I've had through these years. Then it's like when you enjoy something marvelous, you want your best, you want your friends to experience it too. Yeah, you'd be niggardly not to want that. If anything you've enjoyed that's ecstatic, you say, oh, I wish the whole world was here to know. Well, that's basically, sometimes it feels like carrying a lead weight, but there you are. I think it's extraordinarily important that we have these methodologies, for one thing, and that we have the knowledge. The 2 things, that's all I ever asked for. I used my first websites as storing spaces for me in the public. That's kind of odd, isn't it? But that's a fact. I wasn't even aware that hundreds of thousands of people all over the world are reading it. It's like, didn't you compute that? A strange quirk of my personality said, no, I just want to know where I can go to see my own stuff so I can get it out of my head. Right. It's like old rotten paper. I've got to get it out of my head. I can't breathe. I can't think. And there are disorders like that. So I had to suddenly disgorge all of this study I've been doing since basically the 70s. A lot of it on satanic societies and all sorts of weird information, subliminal art, all of that. And so the web, for me, in a strange quirk at that time, it changed later, but at that early time, because just finally came, oh my goodness, thank you, I could type this out and put a few pictures. Oh, I can breathe now. But then in that space, I went on to learn something new. And so the process continued itself pretty much up until the modern day, just disgorging it. And I thought, it's only secondary if people are reading it. Sure, they won't even like it. They won't care. But later on, they go, oh, this was really great. I've learned something. And that was it then. Excellent. But it's not my motive. My motive was not to help humanity. Right? No, it's truth against the world. The only motive I have is that it is my personal vocation, and I am very, very conscious of the giants that I'm standing on the shoulders of to honor their name and their legacy. That's it in a nutshell. What other people today think about it, I don't even know if that's ever been a concern. And that's probably one of the reasons I'm bulletproof and can continue to today. I think if I was overly concerned about that, then the utter obstacles of the trolling and the blowback and the hate would have stopped me long ago.
Well, and that's just it. You set out on a work to make it your vocation in life, to serve the truth, not just what everybody, the mob, and then it ends up serving people. Like it served me, it served so many other people. And now we have, I think, a vehicle that's getting very perfected and honed into a really nice system for people on Unslaved, where you can drop that information and it will benefit people that come to it, because they'll see what you see in it. And even if they don't see what you see, they'll see what they need to see at that time. And it does end up helping in the end. But it is, I think that's what I see in some of the best artists, even martial artists that I've met, some of the best martial artists I've met, they didn't have big dojos. They had like, they're like, you want to go train in the backyard? Let's go spin some sticks around. Like, they were some of the best guys I ever worked with, because they just had that love of it. And they'd been beaten down by the competition out there with the other schools and the politics of it all, and people turning back on them, screwing them over for money. And sometimes that can ruin someone's vocation. Whereas when you do it just with that cause of, I love this, I believe in this, this is something that's living, it's an expression, then it can be incredibly powerful, and it becomes like that rare gem that nobody really knows about. But that is really some of the best stuff. And that's how I see Unslaved. We've got a really solid group of members over there, but it's kind of hidden off the web, and we kind of like it like that.
Yeah, you see, remember, there's also a part of it is that there's a lot of disinformation out there as well.
Yeah,
and sometimes it's not conscious. It's just scholars who didn't know enough. Yeah. As you progress, another little happens that you do get experienced on it, like playing an instrument. And so right now, because of the incredible reading that I've done and cogitation here as well, coming up with unique ideas, yeah, it definitely encourages you to carry on. We just did this week, just to date this show, Gnosticism 1 went up, part 1, and that has been a project since about 1984.
Wow, that far back, eh?
Because
we did a few shows about it, but now you've got your first part of the premium. This is such a fascinating subject. I didn't know half of this stuff, so this is really good.
That's right. There was programs on it in the 80s. Then it got to a peak around 1991, 92. There was a heyday of see, what happened was, it was the 40. See, the Vatican had hidden the Dead Sea Scrolls material, the Jesuits, and they didn't want it released. But despite them, in about 1989, there was a release of documents. I don't know if it was Boston or somewhere like that, but from a big university, there was a leaking of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So now they were public. And so there was a flurry of revelations. Now, the people who wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls are not necessarily Gnostics, but the Gnostic Gospels also, people start paying attention to them as well. But there was great effort by part of the authorities, the Vatican, to suppress at least the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Gnostic Gospels, because both are incendiary and both take the lid off what we know as literalist or dogmatic Christianity, and the church didn't think it would survive. It did survive, but there was much fallout all over the world. And so I just happened to be getting an interest in this subject of Gnosticism unbeknownst to me, exactly at the time when it was reaching its heyday. It would kind of fade under the ground by 93, 94. So I just caught that wave, and I did know a lot about it and read everything that was out there on it. But why it took so long to put it into anything is because, to me, that was part of my private life, because I was involved with different mystical paths, and there was never anything, like I told you, everything about becoming public was accident. So even after that happened, I still was thinking about Gnosticism in that private way that has nothing to do with the world, it's to do with me. So it's taken until now to ever even conceive of putting something together of that knowledge and that journey. We still got part 2 to come. And of course, it does tie in with other things as well. It's not just about Gnosticism. It's about, this law of attraction cult. It's about the whole New Age movement as well. It's about the female psychology. There's a lot. I've weaved a lot of things, like you said earlier. It's not just a history lesson, which you'll get from anybody else. In fact, I don't know, do we have one slide there? Because one thing I pointed out in the program was its orgiastic nature. Yeah. Well, sexuality was always big part of all ancient religion, right? Of all of it, even Judaism. People don't understand that. But ancient religion was very much about sexuality. And sex was often used as a metaphor for something to do with God. Whether it was an ecstatic tradition or a more dogmatic tradition, it didn't really matter. And here's one of them. People see this image of Salome cutting the head of John the Baptist and have no idea that that has erotic overtones. But it's not erotic overtones outside religion. It's eroticism as you would find it within religion. It's part of the symbolism of religion. And this is what I'm saying is completely confirmed by experts, by the way. This is not in itself spurious, because that image is an image in the ritual aspect of castration. And we can't stop here to pause on its many, many meanings, but just the fact that she's red-haired often. Who the hell is this Salome anyway? Was she part of some female cult that was at a very, very high level? I mean, what is this figure? And how does she have this much power over, John the Baptist? Oh, and then why do the Knights Hospitallers and the Knights Templars and the ancient Mandeans and the Fourth Sect all talk about John the Baptist as their icon and not Jesus? So we could go into detail of unimaginable, and even the plate has symbolism. Even the plate has symbolism you wouldn't believe. We got into that in the Female Illuminati program. But go to the next one. I sent a few to you because the next one there. Could you read that? I can't hardly see it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's from the Gospel of Thomas. I think this is one of the books that was kicked out of the Bible, wasn't it?
Yep.
Whoever drinks from my mouth will become like me. I myself shall become that person, and the hidden things will be revealed to that one.
Right. Now that's sexual too. In the orgiastic rites, although they're using the word Jesus, the Gospel of Thomas is a Gnostic gospel. And so those Gnostics had a different personification of Jesus. And it was Jesus as phallus. I told you get them all around you in the city and towns, so just bear with it. Jesus for them is the phallic icon, just like Pharaoh was, right? Like Shiva and the Shiva lingam, which is anointed with oil and anointed with milk. That's semen. Did you know that there was groups that could be ruling you today? It was just by a quirk that they were suppressed by Constantine. But even that's from the Gnostic Gospels. There's even in the regular, the Judas kiss in the garden, the Mary Magdalene being this virgin whore. Did you know that if you're looking for sexual imagery, the very fact that the Virgin Mary is impregnated by a beam of light or a dove or a Holy Spirit or a Gabriel or whoever, this is all euphemisms for something. And it goes on and on and on. What was next on that one?
This one's Cagliostro.
Yep.
Let me go to
Cagliostro. That's right. The black magician who ran Hermetic and Gnostic groups throughout Europe. And he had a rite called the Egyptian rite. He invented it. It's the rite of Mizraim. It's now common to Masonry. Masonry adopted a lot of these orgiastic rites. And he invented an orgiastic Masonic degree. And when he physically met very wealthy women, princesses and countesses would gather, he would strip off naked. He always have a serpent in his hand. He would use the snake symbolism, and the women would disrobe, and there'd be an orgy. And this is where you get your eyes wide shut. This is where you get your devil rides out. Yep, it's all being revealed through the movies, like you said earlier. Well, Cagliostro was just one man with one rite that became the rage throughout Europe. And he went all over the place, and they were all involved in it. And those rights haven't gone away, like those movies are trying to tell you. But he's just one man. Go to the next one there. Give a few examples of talking about here. Yeah, this group was called the Moravian Brothers. They're technically a Czech Christian group, but they're far more than that. They're they started as quasi-Masonic, and then became pretty much full Masonic. They're like I would read them as a Gnostic Masonic stroke Christian sect from about 1739. Their beliefs were like a hodgepodge.
I was saying the checkerboard floor there.
Yes, they're basically Masonic. They would be Masons who, being superficially Christian, were into a lot of other things. because of their reading and their, whoever they were listening to. They're Orphic. They're following Christian Orphism. And that involves a lot of orgiasm and a lot of homosexuality, like like a great deal of Gnosticism does. We go into this in the program. And later, as this Moravian brothers, their techniques, the thing that they worked out, was wholesale accepted by German Masonic lodges and probably others in Austro-Hungary as well. And we know this because they actually left papers there. Look up Moravian Brethren. This is not by any means something that was, too secret. This was actually quite well known before it faded. Go to the next one. You can read on that one what they got up to.
Sure. From Tim O'Neill, the erotic Freemasonry of Count Nicholas von Zinzendorf. He says, a Christian predecessor to Adam Weishaupt's more deist Illuminati of Bavaria, Zinzendorf's order proclaimed its purpose to be the extension of the kingdom of Christ all over the world.
And there's two more.
Their
there's
version
two or
of
three
it.
more.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, well, the noted point why I put that is because this was a preceder. When you hear about the Illuminati being orgiastic and people, like that you have at the Bohemian Grove or somewhere like that. Yeah, but they never tell you that the Illuminati got it from these guys and other groups like this who hid behind a veil of Christianity but had these pagan Orphic rites. Go read on. There's 2 or 3 more of those slides.
This one was the same one. Oh, here we go. And you, mysterious limb, which sanctifies and commends the martial selves for the sake of Jesus in prayer, in the embraces designed by the original mercy itself, while the seed of the church is sown, be blessed and anointed with the blood which issues from our man.
Yeah, blood is semen. Go back. You missed one. There was one before.
I think this one ended up being the same quote on a different slide.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay, then, yeah. So go to the one you just read. Read that again slowly. Sorry about the slide mix-up.
Oh, that's okay. And you, mysterious limb, which sanctifies and commends the marital selves for the sake of Jesus in prayer, in the embraces designed by the original mercy itself, while the seed of the church is sown, be blessed and anointed with the blood which issues from our man.
Yeah, it's all phallic. Now you go to the next one. But blood is just a euphemism.
Right. Yeah, people have to understand it's not always literal, right?
Nope.
Jesus, feel burning affection for the side which is open to the spouse of the Lamb, since the spear has pierced the goal of all married people.
Yeah. So again, the spear, the devotee is the open womb, the open vagina for the phallic Jesus to enter in. And the water of life is another euphemism. It's often used for that. Let me see if there's other one.
Oh yeah, last one here. Yeah. Oh, what glances I send you now. I am one spirit with you, and you are a body with me, and one soul. You treasure of your side, you mad little thing. I devour you like food and drink to fulfillment, and am mad with love, out of my mind. Wow, there's nothing
so
holy
this is
here.
They were inebriated, just like they were. See, this phallic worship is as older than 1500 BC. 1,500 years they were at it with the cult of Eleusis and at Phrygia. Wow. All over the pagan world, this was normal, and it wasn't something outside religion. It was the religion. In fact, go back to ancient Egypt. You see this thing, the raising of the Jed column, right? That's the phallus of Osiris. That's long before 1500 BC. And hence, again, I said again, the steeples, the monoliths, the obelisks that surround us now. Look at that big thing in Washington, D.C.
District of Columbia. Yeah.
As long as you take Jesus, the word, and substitute it for phallus, or Priapus, or Dionysus, or Pan. And Pan was the one who just ran around, rampaging. Bacchus, Dionysus, it's all the gods of liquor. But the liquor itself, the potion was a concoction of many brews, including serpent's blood and bull's blood. And they were high on this. So today, if you read my Trees of Life book, we go double volume, we go into all of this and where it came from. But it's almost like today when people at a concert start spontaneously dancing. See, we have to try and get it into our heads how it's sort of easy. It's not weird. If somebody's, drumming away at the Burning Man or whatever, what does everybody do? And the music is pounding. You've got to understand that, in those days, you just had a little tambourine and rattled it, and that did the trick. They went into a serpentine mode. You see, it's not like everything has to be so explicit and embossed as it is today. A woman, it's like the Cayley in Scotland, just a single woman singing, or people just a little minor drumming like you might find in Africa or somewhere like that, and that did it. That enlivened people, and they became orgiastic. And then, fueled with alcohol, that one we have today, by God. In Ireland, all you get on the street is churches and bars. Point made. So you don't need to look too far for the facts of this. But that was the ancient world. And so the program of Gnosticism wanted to show that fact, that, the kiss, the water of my mouth, right, etc. Jesus is the holy phallus. Then you bring in John Allegro. Jesus is the holy mushroom. Then you bring in this, and you bring in that. Your female rights. People walking around today don't even believe that women can join secret society. We've already years ago proven that to be false in female Illuminati. There are a whole bona fide schools of female Freemasonry. But your average Joe to this day, a clergyman, a person that pretends to be in the know, will 100% deny that that's the case. And so you have to sort of peel away all the lies in this action. It's not about coming upon truth directly. It's through that apophatic of elimination of the untrue that the truth is. And this, I think, is, although people pay lip service to that kind of knowledge and understanding, when you really talk to them, they've been brought up for 17 years under the lights, man, in normal colleges and all. This is not what it takes. You get a few people within those colleges who have this ability. I'm not doubting that. But by and large, no. You're meant to give it to me in a shrink-wrapped, drive-through, spinner rack version. Otherwise, I'm not interested. I don't want to know. And that's how you got their qualifications and degrees for the most part. So this knowledge is occult. And it takes a special kind of thinking, a special kind of reading, a special kind of investigation. And then, of course, more than that, it's philosophia. You have to love it. You can't want it just to gain knowledge, which 90% of the people in this movement are even doing it. They're high on that. No, you've got to have a relationship with it, a very intimate one. Otherwise, you'll end up psychotic.
Which we see far too much. You bring up an interesting way of looking at this. So getting into this whole blood drinking and the sexual thing and all that, and then them taking names like Jesus and all the names they use in their writings, they're projecting onto those things. And this is the issue. You have the symbol of something that, it'd be like, what's the difference between what William Blake maybe wrote about someone like Jesus or someone else versus what these guys mean, or any of the different angles that you can take on it. I've even seen the same thing in the martial arts world, where you have one thing and then everybody projects onto it and then makes it their own thing. And the way these secret societies write is, as you've said before, there's the exoteric, which is the surface level of what you're reading in your face, those words. And then there's the esoteric, which is what the words mean, not necessarily what they mean to you, but what they mean to them. And it'd be the same with symbols too, wouldn't it? It'd be, oh, I see a unicorn and a lion on the Canadian crest, which is obviously related to the royal family of England. I like unicorns. I like lions. Those are cool. But then you go, yeah, but what does it mean to them? Right? That's the whole thing we're trying to get to here.
Oh, where did those symbols originate? There's no unicorns in ancient Egypt. Yeah, but there's plenty of them up in the sky. You see, there's so far to go. There's so far to go in that regard. And it's all about opening your mind up to different kinds of things. But the secret societies do think of us as muggers. But at the same time, they do know that the way the intellect is, that you can put something in plain sight. We have a divided brain anyhow, right? We have a conscious and unconscious, like you said. So they say, hey, we've learned this weird thing. We can put our agenda in plain sight. Right? When it comes to metaphors, not only is Judaism full of metaphors, or the Bible is full of metaphors, Masonry is all allegory and metaphor. So William Blake is a poet. He deals in metaphor. So a person like that, they can go to town. Even Carl Jung, right, his red book and his assessment of things, There's nothing that isn't metaphor. So then you have to ask psychological questions at this point. Why does the brain communicate in metaphor? Which leads you to another question of, is there any other way to communicate except metaphor? Yeah, the Vulcan mind probe, wait till we're there, where we can read each other's, I'm waiting for the day when we can all read each other's thoughts. And then that will bring more chaos. That won't be very good either, because now you've lost your privacy. So guess what? You're stuck with saying, I feel as hot as hell in here. That's a metaphor, right? So, the empty can rattles the most. That's a metaphor. So our language is skeins of metaphor. You'll never come to the end of it. Even me saying you'll never come to the end of it is a road metaphor, right?
Yeah.
It never ends. So then we have to wrap back on ourselves. So I believe, and I've always held, that when you're studying secret societies and all of this stuff we're talking about, like symbolism, it's holy work, because you're never apart from it in the objective way that you might first think. But the scientist wants objectivity. Well, he keeps still looking for it. But the world has been mind controlled into thinking you can stand back as some sort of objective viewer, and there's the knowledge out there. This is preposterous. Is about the paradigm we're talking about, science paradigm or educational paradigm, whatever. There's no such thing. You take yourself and your mind and your consciousness into all areas of your focus, of your what's called intentionality in philosophy. And therefore, you are there, you are present as a subject. So therefore, the easiest and quickest way to say it is that what you call objectivity is an attribute of the self.
Right.
Yes, there's objectivity, but it is subject. It's an attribute of the subject. The subject comes first. In fact, that's what the word means. Sub, like submarine, or subject, means to be under, to be a foundational principle. Think of all the words with sub in it. Object is to stand outside. The very etymology tells you the truth. But look what these materialists have done. The etymology will tell you right all along the way. Right? Sub is under, and these are foundational. Ob is out and outside. So you have to be a subject before you can even have objectivity. Look how you can dissolve their lies. And this means then, and what this means is that all knowledge is a communion. Since I am present while knowledge comes to me, I lean out towards it, it leans towards me. There's a very different relationship between knowledge and the getting of it than just this subject-object nonsense that they laud as being so extraordinary. The whole thing is so bankrupt, it's not even funny. And then, of course, we dealt at the very end in Gnosticism with the whole thing of virtual realities, another one that Gnostics, because I'm antagonistic to Gnostics, just to make that point, I think it's a very deadly and dangerous philosophy. But what they've been trying to do of late within the high-tech world is to try and create metaphors, from this virtual reality that we're kind of familiar with cell phones and computers, simulations. They're trying to vindicate their view of the God above the God, the demiurge, and then the God that's higher. They've really tried, actually backfired, so they're not doing it as much anymore. But they have tried in past to use computer simulation to say, see, that's not like, we're trapped in the simulation. And then at the end of the program, I go through that and show that that's absolutely nonsense. Right now, we're communicating in pixels for sure, and by way of internet signals. But we know we are. Yeah. We know there's a concrete reality behind it, and we're not falling in love with pixels and wavelengths and bits. Right? We know the human is behind it, but that's why the metaphor doesn't work for Gnostics, because they're in it and wouldn't know it. Secondly, we created the computer, and we're not the demiurge, so the whole thing falls apart. Humans have created the computer, they're conscious of creating it, they know all of its functions, and those functions were put there by us, right? By man, by the people who created it. That is not a parallel to any demiurge. And then, again, the demiurge would be thoroughly evil, and an evil being would then never give the computer Gelf. If we're in the simulation, then that Gelf would have never any understanding that he would be dark on that forever, because the demiurge would have nothing to gain from ever letting the Gelf know, hey, I'm in a simulation. See, there'd be nothing to gain from it, because we have evil within us as creators of virtual realities, but we also have good within us. The demiurge has no good within him. See, so the parallels fall apart, but it has to be thought out as it's like peeling an onion. It does make you cry, by the way, to get to the core of it, but it needs to be done if you want to have the meal.
That's right. That's right. And that's incredible. And you break down, I love that subject object thing is so incredible. We've done a lot on it, but you break that down in the idealism series that you had done in the past. Is that correct? You kind of get into the
That's right.
differentiation there between those ideologies
Yeah.
and how to correct this view that comes from the sort of objectivist, or not the scientific world of, oh, all those idealists are all just mystical wackos that just think everything's out in the fairylands, when no, that's the hijacked version of the cult that comes from the law of attraction cult. The true idealist, subjective view of things is what you were breaking down, and you correct that misunderstanding in that wonderful series that you've got up there.
And there's actually 5 more of those to come episodes. That
Oh
was
my
only
God.
half.
Nice. Wow.
So members of that, yeah, catastrophism. There's a whole bunch of stuff coming. You're right. Yeah, that's basically the way it, and it's quite simple. So it's not heady or anything.
Yeah.
It's real common sense. It breaks down on many, many fronts. And that is a very important philosophical aspect to get into. It's really something that is an aberrant part of the thinking that's part of our society. These things are conventions. And people go along with it just for safety, but if they think it out, they'll soon realize that it's not true. And that there's a lot more to it than just even intellect.
Yeah.
You know, why do you have a split brain? I mean, just face that fact. There's something very odd there about why one would have a right and a left hemisphere. There's a whole story there, which has to be gone into.
Wow, well, this is incredible. And Michael, I know it's kind of you're so busy these days. I don't want to hang on for too much longer with you, but maybe you could just wrap up for people, given the context of the day, the question of freedom, because we've talked a lot about this. You have an amazing website called shellingzone.com, I believe, or .org. I can't remember which one it was. We'll link it, where you talk about the idea of freedom, and being that we're in this time right now, and our freedom is being threatened externally by external forces. You've always had a lot to say about the idea of, again, the freedom coming from within and being the ground of being, and what the solution really is not necessarily just always looking for these external forces to somehow grant you freedom. You had a wonderful statement from years back that stuck with me, which was that freedom is not something that the world is ever going to give you. Freedom and meaning, those aren't external. Freedom is something that is a gift that you give yourself. I wondered if you could maybe finish with a little bit about that concept for people.
Yeah, it is. And again, that's something that's a bit counterintuitive, because you remember, I was just talking about society's conventions. We get so sure that other people award us that it comes from outside, that in the end, it's a slap in the face to what really freedom is all about. And my mentors have always said that people don't want freedom. So that's why you don't have it. We invent the governments in the shadow of the government, because secretly we don't like what freedom entails, what it allows us to do. So there's we're making baby steps along the way. And there were certain philosophers, there were idealists as well, who made freedom essential. Like, it was the footprint of spirit. That's how important it was. And the whole idea that you have the freedom to not do the right thing. You know, say you're a Christian, right? You have the freedom to break all God's edicts if you wanted to, or you have the freedom to obey them. But freedom then must be akin to the most important of the virtues, since you can do one or the other. But nobody's really worshiping freedom. So what happens is that freedom is always there, but in the background. And what your Hegels and all wanted is a society that has it in the foreground all the time. You know, that palpable, even amongst the hedonists who are misusing freedom. But of course, that was sabotaged. Their philosophy, you know, Marx came along and other things, and they totally sabotaged that particular. Oh, they've really defaced it. It was actually Immanuel Kant that first sort of set the ball rolling. Oh my goodness, the amount of disfiguring, and I'm sad to say even Ayn Rand, in my opinion, picked it up wrong. I understand why. It's because she was such a freedom lover in her own life. She thought that what Kant was talking about smacked of collectivism, and that set her off. But you know, there's no doubt about it that she misread Kant, which is not hard to do, by the way, right? Awful writer he was. So yeah, there's all sorts of different interpretations to that. But I think that, yeah, it's such a vast subject to get into that one. But what's happened is that we have allowed these warlords and psychopaths in government to award us something external, when in fact it's attitudinal. See, they don't have freedom themselves. It works out this way. Those psychopaths, they have billions, so they have a certain freedom, right? But they don't really have attitudinal freedom because they're slaves of the paradigm. They're not open-minded people. And so they then say, oh, you give us the reins, we'll take it. You give us the white squares of knowledge because you won't stand on it, we'll occupy the squares. But deeper than that is that if we don't even love the freedom that we have, if we are, see, it's like this, if we are slapping freedom in the face ourselves personally, we're defiling it, then isn't there something very insipid about saying, government, give me freedom? I'm a lover of freedom. Look at my placard.
Yeah.
So when I look at the world, I'm going, all I see is haters of freedom, haters of wisdom. It's called misosophy. Look that one up. But I also see haters of freedom. But all these haters of freedom are running madly going, give us liberty, equity.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's such a contradiction.
Who the fuck has climbed out of the asylum fucking window, down the goddamn drain pipe, right, and running in the street saying, trying to pretend to you, because this is how it works. And then government comes along and goes, you lovers of freedom, you guys who have definitely, you're responsible for yourselves and you love freedom, we'll give you, every 4 years you can come and vote. So this is where the philosophy equals the politics. Lovers, haters of freedom, and those who've given up their responsibility for self-ownership now have to compensate and create, from a persona point of view, that they're the brother's keeper. They're super responsible for the ecology and everything, the poor. We call it voting every 4 years. So when you line up for that, and most all of politics is born out of haters of freedom needing to compensate or displace, it's also called. And in that, the political world will never fall. It's made out of the cement that holds the bricks together of the whole political, meaning government. See, so anarchists can throw all the petrol bombs and bricks they want. The wall still stays there like something looming in adamantine. And that's because you haven't found the tiny little, you don't know where to unplug it. The whole thing can go over like the tower struck with lightning if only you knew the psychology behind it. And that is it. It's what Erich Fromm called that freedom from freedom, escape from freedom. Central to him, he was a psychologist, German psychologist. And to me, I've never seen any evidence to disprove that. So the journey must start very, very early on, where it's in a parenting sort of sphere where a growing child has learned to become a hater of freedom. Not a lover of freedom, not a lover of wisdom, but a hater of it. That they will then immediately become a social entity and a political entity as opposed to a philosophical entity. So, this is another, one could talk endlessly about this because it is in our streets again today. But part of the lie mechanism is that everyone points to the government as if it's doing something bad, when in fact it's saving you. It's saving your persona. It's saving the appearances. The person who lives in a lie, this is the dynamic of the lie. They create the very edifices to control them so that they can have an external blame. And that's ramped up. This particular psychological syndrome has ramped up recently. That's how it is. And all those ecologists, they're all Gnostics. They're pseudo-ecologists. I love the earth and I love animals. I would consider myself a deep ecologist. These people have co-opted something very profound that came out of Heidegger, actually. Heidegger is the creator of ecology. Did you know that? Mm. So, yeah, a Norwegian guy called Arne Naes, who was a student of Heidegger, took it on and made it into the movement. So it had genuine concerns, but it was soon co-opted by the left. That's the political side of it. But when Al Gore is up there, just like Bill Gates is today, or the World Economic Forum or the Club of Rome, talking about external environments, just like when Al Gore did it, and now they're doing it again. Watch out for that. Even when Bill Gates and other people are drawing attention to your physical body, to physical illness, be very careful. There's a ritual going on. Sorcery is happening to you. Because all of that rhetoric, once properly decoded, remember we said everything was an allegory and a metaphor? The metaphor that they're really, behind that insider smile, and they're killing themselves, by the way, but is that they're talking about your psychological temperament. but they're doing so in words repackaged to be it's the environment, it's a planet, she's dying, or no, it's you've got viruses, bugs, it's your biology. Yeah, not psychology. So when you watch the movement of history, especially in the 20th and 21st century, this is how you can identify what the cognitive sort of dissonance is at that point. And the remedies are not easy, because the remedy is to turn around and face your psychology and get into psychology, as opposed to, biology plays a part in that, and in your extended society, of course, plays a part. But if you've left out the real core of the issue, which most people have, there's not even hardly anybody in this whole movement who deals with psychology, in the way that I do, in the healthy way. And so, unfortunately, then you lay yourself open to the greatest tyrant. But again, the main point is this: if you have murdered freedom and desecrated freedom in your own private heart, then there's all the sin in the world telling me that you're waiting for big government to give you, you just can't wait, and you're dying and you're pulling your hair out and you're like utterly, incensed by the fact that there's no freedom in society and freedom in this. If I diagnose you and you have desecrated freedom in the Kantian way that he says people do, then you will scream as loud as you want for external impositions of the freedom, and you're living in the word. It's purely that word in the dictionary is what you're living in. You're living, which people do. They live in the words: freedom, equity, justice, human rights, humanity. These are just words. They absolutely only words. But you've got people who are educated now who can think no further than that. There's no reality at all. It's just a simulation. They're a simulation. They become plastic, and they want to live in a plastic world. And so the freedoms that they're yelling for and screaming for, that is because they've actually committed the greatest crime against the true capitalized freedom, because they don't want it. It's distasteful to them. And the story of that, of course, then goes back to parenting and society. And that's what we try to unpack on Enslaved pretty much constantly, because it's a message that really is hard to grasp in the first place. I know that. So one has to go very, very gradually, and it's slowly people get it.
That's profound. That changed a lot for me when you brought up the whole thing about Al Gore talking about climate change, and we got Greta Thunberg out there, and then you got Klaus Schwab talking about we need a great reset, and Mao Zedong used to talk about a great leap forward, and
that's right.
They have all these words and terms that you think have to do with the economy, with disease, with the planet melting down on your head, but it isn't any of that. They're talking about, yeah, we need to reset your brains so that you're all programmed in our matrix. We need to, the climate is melting down in your consciousness, and we're going to take advantage of that and build you back into our temples and our rituals. And there's a way that we have to understand this. And then when we understand what they're doing, realize we're building if our immune system on an individual level for freedom and consciousness is low, then it gives rise to these tyrants. The tyrants aren't just there. They come in the vacuum of us not doing the inner work to actually be free from the inside out, not from the outside in, right?
Yeah, and if we were doing the work, we wouldn't have government. Do you know what the best thing for the economy? Get rid of government. It's that easy. So why is it not done?
Yeah.
Get rid of government. There's plenty of people who know how to hustle and build and sell and buy and show you how to do all of those things. We want those mind-forged manacles, you see, and only a psychological person could ever work out why. This is the most extraordinary thing. And so all that's happened recently is that it's just ramped up. Freedom was offered, a measure of freedom was offered, and people didn't want it. So they came up with whatever they possibly could. They want to live under draconian times. Yeah, it's really remarkable, but it's in here. But then in here is also the compensation. You're in shame, deep existential shame, because you know that you're doing this to yourself. So then comes the modes of compensation and displacement by which you showboat around that you're waving the flag of freedom.
There's all this virtue signaling stuff and the masking and all that.
That's it.
Yeah.
And the political milieu who knows this goes, give it to him, give it to him, give him that pen. Quick, organize it. Give him more money. Let them open more green societies. Hey, we'll talk about, So now more than ever, the individual has been militarized, weaponized in a and they ran amok. All you saw the running amok that's what it was. It was literally trying to use that muscle. But these are all necrophilus, hair trigger, disciples of crowdism or whatever, the most evil cult that's ever existed is the crowd, and they make a beeline for it, because now that you've sold out true freedom, you've got to cluster with other, part of the compensation is a cluster with other people who are doing the same thing. But as I analyzed in other programs, there's a violence involved. It's exactly the same metaphor we just used with freedom. The one who's screaming or running around the world looking for money and funding and approval to fight violence is the most violent creature in the world, because they've done an act of violence to themselves by joining the crowd. So why would I look at somebody who's done existentially and psychologically one of the most violent acts, which is lose oneself in the crowd? And that's not even rightly said. It's not so much, that is a form of violence. I mean the urge by which they get up out of their bed, make their little placards and run out and down the town. There's a definite violent urge that is, see, we would have to widen, the whole world would have to widen, because we're only in the crowd. And when we're in the crowd, we lose all the things I'm talking about. We have to still, in our 21st century, widen our understanding of violence, because it includes all definitions but this. A man's violent desire to enter into crowd consciousness is an act of violence. Therefore, that person who is now violent, deeply violent to themselves and to the conscience, entering into the crowd screaming for a world without violence, and the violence over there, look at all those violent people. I don't know if there's something wrong with me, but that doesn't sound very right. Now, I know that not one person is going to ever be cured by this, but the truth is the truth. I don't serve people. I serve the truth, and that is the truth. And whether they like it or not, or whether they acknowledge it or not, or whether they're going to face it or not, or ever change, so I'm not a political entity. I don't care. Right? I'm a psychological entity, and this is the fact. This is the diagnosis. But the doctor never gets in the bed with a patient. So, I know my limitations. You just put it out there, and if somebody gets it, they get it. If they don't, they don't.
Well, and what you're saying is the solution, right? That's the whole point. I mean, we called it unslaved for a reason, to unslave yourself from the tyranny around you, whether it be government and corporations and monopolies and secret societies, or whether it be the crowd that's always trying to pull you into the lowest common denominator, to be like them, to erase your individuality. This is why we go into the idea of the hero. We talk about that on the show a lot, the hero's journey, about how to live a heroic life. And to find it within yourself, to be authentic and be honest on this path. And when you're free within, they can chain you to as many walls as they want. I mean, as far as I'm here trying to do what I can, so we don't have to live in full-blown communist dictatorships. In the end of the day, it all starts with the foundation of you understanding that you are free. Free people don't ask permission from tyrants like this. They don't ask permission. They don't wait for the government to go, am I allowed to not wear my mask anymore? Am I allowed to go around without a passport? Or they don't wait. They're free. And it's just a matter of that has to start within. So just brilliant, man. Just brilliant. Look, we'll have to do it again sometime. Getting lots of love in the chat. So much to get into. I'm encouraging people to go and check us out on Unslaved. We do a show there every single week. As well as there's boatloads of premium content on there and presentations and articles that you can check out. So go hit us up at unslaved.com. And Michael, if you have any parting words, let us know. But thank you so much for joining me here today. It was a blast as always, mate.
Oh, it's great. I love talking about these subjects. And it's always great for the opportunity to do that, and also clear the head a bit, because I've been so tunnel visioned on the work. But yeah, Gnosticism too. Magnum opus coming out real soon this week, hopefully. So people stay tuned for that.
Really cool. Really cool. Well, thanks again, man. I'll let you go. I'm going to do a couple announcements for my listeners, but thanks again. And we'll catch you guys on Unslaved another time. All right. Cheers, Michael. Wow. Every time I talk with him, there's so much more that I get out of it. And I've learned so much, as well as just the amount of resources that Michael's pointed me to, the books, the authors. It's just incredible. So I think it really was fitting during this time that we talked about this, going into the past so we can understand the present, understanding what it is inside of us. Because I get all these people asking me, Dave, why is all these people still going along with all this nonsense? You just got the diagnosis. People want freedom from freedom. Okay, I know if you're listening to this show, you're not one of those people, hopefully. You're here to learn about it, as I am. We're all students, right? But if I sit there and I look back and I get frustrated, and I look around, I go, why is everybody still going along with this? How come they can't see? I mean, I can't even move around in my own province, for crying out loud. They got police checkpoints everywhere, not allowed to leave my country. What's next? And that's the way this apparatus works. They test you. This is a giant IQ test, litmus test. How much do you really want freedom? We're going to take it all away from you bit by bit, and you're going to let us. Unless we as individuals pull away our support. We pull away our support from the things we don't support, and we start supporting the things we do support. That includes the ideas, that includes the people, that includes who we bank with, where we buy stuff, where we interact, what kind of social media we support, what kind of music we support. It's an act that you do of your will. I was just on a show. I was interviewed yesterday for a podcast called The Renaissance of Man, or Renaissance of Men. I think it's going to come out in a week or two. Really, really good talk. Talking about the emasculated culture that we're living in, both men and women, by the way, and how do we solve it? And it was like a 3-hour conversation. We got into so many different subjects, but I was just getting into that idea on there as well about again, it all comes back to freedom. It comes back to the question of the nature of evil. And when we look at all this evil, dark stuff that is coming out, and more of that's going to be coming out, stay tuned. Because it all has to come to the surface. You can't hide the truth forever, even if it's ugly. As that comes out, we need to ask ourselves, well, what is it in me that gave space for that evil to exist? What was my resistance internally from even wanting to know about it, let alone go out and expose it and try to do something about it? Even if it was just for myself and my family, right? Like, what is it? It's that, I don't want to see. I don't want to see. I don't want to see. There's no heroism left. There's no masculinity left. There's no positive femininity left. It's all been washed. And this has been systematic, absolutely. There's a lot of fingers we could point, a lot of blame we could lay. However, that's not how a true victor of life, that's not how a true heroic, free, sovereign person acts. Yes, there are enemies out there. There are obstacles in your path. There's evil in the world competing against the good to try to enslave you at every moment, because that's the game we're in. Earth is a dojo, school of hard knocks. There's no free lunches. And we can deny it all we want, but until we take that responsibility back to say, I know that I'm against these things that are happening in my world around me and in my life and the people around me, I'm against them. But if you don't have that ability to fortify yourself and build your own internal immune system so that you're immune from that evil, from those lies, from that mind control zombie state that you see everybody walking around in, then we can all believe that, it's always them, it's always the government, it's always this, it's always that. Yep, they're working, they're doing what they do. It's like parasites. There's parasites. There's predators out there right now that would probably eat you for lunch if they could. Like I'm talking about the animal kingdom. There's diseases in the world. There's viruses in the world. If you're not up to scratch, if you are eating crap food, all your stuff in your house and your cupboards loaded with chemicals and toxins, the stuff you're putting in your mind, I mean, thinking about consciousness here, how consciousness affects even your physical health, right? And your mental health. If you're not doing the things to tend your garden, to make yourself actually be positive and healthy and strong and free, then what do you expect? Of course, the government and the secret societies and these criminals and the snake oil salesmen and these people that are trying to manipulate, of course, they're going to come out in bunches to try to go, look at that little naive baby deer out on the pasture. Let's pull them into the back room over here. So don't be that naive baby deer. Become a lion for the truth, for your freedom. And that comes from within. Sorry, I'm getting on a rant here, but this is just, whenever I talk to Michael, I think about this stuff because this is how I changed myself, guys. This is the mindset these are the lectures I give myself so that I don't always pass the buck and go, yep, it's that evil, those evil Illuminati people. those evil Klaus Schwabs and Bill Gates of the world. The governments, yep, they're the ones issuing the orders. Well, who's following the orders? These people would be out of business in a heartbeat if nobody showed up. It's like what I was saying in the series that I was doing on cults. And by the way, I was talking to my wife and she brought it up. She's like, Dave, I think the whole world is getting like Jim Jonesed. I'm like, that's a good one. I'm going to steal that one. We're getting Jim Jonesed right now. You remember Jim Jones? If you don't, you're new to this, go look him up. Got 1,000 people to kill themselves and their children, drink the Kool-Aid. You know, it's been happened many times ago, or many times over. Heaven's Gate, so many others. Solar Temple, the church, the mosques, the temples. This is ancient. And that's why I wanted to get Michael to go into that history. But, you know, just realizing we are the ones propping this up. When we realize that, if we stop propping it up and maybe forget the we for a moment, just go, well, I can't control the crowd. I don't want to be a dictator myself. I'm going to stop propping it up. I can only control myself. That's all I've been given jurisdiction over. That's all I've been given command over. So that's where I'm going to do my work. From there, a natural effect takes place that you didn't force by creating this mob that's going to go out with pitchforks and try to nail everybody to crosses that wronged you. A natural byproduct happens where you create a new field of energy that people see and they realize that's not someone to mess with. Another person looks at you and goes, that's someone to emulate. That's someone to cop. That's someone I'm going to look up to. If they can do it, I can do it. And that's the best way. That's all I can think of to do, because what's that old statement? You crush one tyrant's head and then you rise up the tyrant afterwards. So this is why this stuff is so important. And it's really important that we get this, because the world, as it's devolving more and more into this tyranny, I feel in a way as if humanity's being taunted and poked and prodded in order to wake us up. We're getting the exact type of resistance, opposition, challenge, and tyranny in our faces to get as obvious as it needs to become in order for us to go, yeah, we're not doing this. And I know it's excruciating for those of you who are still tuned in that get this already and you're watching, you're like, wow, TikTok, what's going on? When are we going to be free? All I can say is start now. You're free right now. You walk outside, yep, people are going to scorn you for not following what the crowd is doing because they think they're under orders from the government, from all these things. Let them be what they're going to be. Realize also, they're not the only people. There's so many millions and millions of people around the world that think like this now, that didn't think like this before, because of the fact of what I'm telling you, that this event, this time that we're experiencing is happening for a reason. You got to believe it. Otherwise, you'll go psychotic. And the reason is humanity, if we're going to evolve as individuals, as a species, as a planet, we got to shake off the refusal to be responsible for ourselves. We got to shake off the addiction that we have to being told what to do by a nanny state. We got to shake off the ignorance factor because we're afraid to look down those dark hallways and address the shadow and bring it to the surface and heal it. If you got diagnosed with cancer, you can be as I don't have cancer. You can think about all you want, but in the end, what's going to happen if you ignore it and don't do anything about it? Ignorance is not bliss, but we've fallen for that spell that it was. And we traded our freedom as individual sovereign beings, created as a reflection of all that is, all that ever was, and all that ever will be. We traded that for some cartoons, some Krispy Kreme donuts, some cheap thrills, a bunch of idiotic, low IQ celebrities and journalists that are talking down to you, and you believe them. And then we traded our most precious gift that we have, that wasn't given to us by a government, wasn't given to us by the crowd, wasn't given to us by the church or some Masonic lodge. It was given to us by the creative force that brought you here. So until you recognize that, you will be preyed upon by predators. And we need to do away with it. This whole thing I've been talking about starve the beast and all that. It's a deeper, bigger thing, you know. And then I found some different things, you know, to help support my show, whatever. And I'll finish with a little message about that in a bit. But it's always about the message here. We starve the beast. Starve that inner beast, that liar that's inside of you, telling you you're no good. Just go along with what everybody else is doing. Don't question it. Don't be a self. Absorb yourself in the Borg. You got to starve that beast first. Then you can start thinking, okay, where else can I pull my energy and attention away from to find solutions? How can I go out and create for myself and my life and my family? And then how can I contribute back and give back? What's my vocation in life? Do you even know what that is? Do I have a purpose? What's my purpose? You got to untie those knots and starve those lies out that you've been telling yourself. And then, yes, some just basic solutions that I've been working with lately is, think of it like this. Just on let's get back to earth here for a minute. We just experienced in the last 14 months, literally the biggest wealth transfer in history from people like you and me, the little guys, the middle class people, the hardworking people that are trying to provide for ourselves and our family, trying to follow the rules, trying to do what we can. We've just been robbed blind in the biggest transfer of wealth in history. Are you okay with that? Because I'm not. And I am so overjoyed to see solutions out there. There are many. Look at the platforms we're on right now. That's one of them. We have to do this in a multi-pronged approach. Pull your energy away from those big monopoly companies that just rob you blind and are now trying to rob you of your right to speak. So starve that Facebook beast. Get the hell off there. Why are we on there? Why are we even on there? Do you know they make money every nanosecond that you are on there with an account? Do you know that you're giving them your free labor so that you can actually they can plug all the data about you, all the posts you put on there, all the images you put on there. They can make psychological profiles out of you using artificial intelligence. They can sell that off to intelligence agencies and big corporations. YouTube, Google, same thing. What do you think they want next with this passport? They're going to merge it into the whole deal where you won't be able to take a library book out unless you comply, get in line, and do what you're told. And until some of us stand up, and I know there's hundreds of millions of us around the world, until we get together as the little guys and go, no, we're not buying shit from you. We're not going to walk into Walmart anymore. We're not going to Target. We're not going to Shoppers Drug Mart. We're not going to Walgreens. We're not going to these companies. I'm not going to those. I'm not going to go support those musicians and those movies and films made by blood-drinking psychopaths. I'm just not going to support it. So that's the main call, guys, of this show is withdraw your support from what you don't support. You don't have to. There's plenty of alternatives. I'm happy to see people like Mike Lindell. They're making their platforms. I heard he's had a few glitches. I don't know. Hopefully that works out. If it's something you can get on, I'll get on there too. There's people trying to come up with, I think he's got another one where he's going to be competing with Amazon. Jeff Bezos, you want to know how much money that bastard made while we all lost our jobs and our businesses? I was told that my business was just not safe, so I had to shut it down, even though the whole business model was based on health of all levels. People loved it. It was like therapy for them. I served my community well. And I was told, no, you got to shut it down. It doesn't stand up. It doesn't measure up to the code, the health code. But up the road, there's selected gyms and selected businesses and the big box. They're cool to go. Friends of mine, a family-owned business, generations. They have these little coffee shops. They have they make sandwiches. They do I think they do catering and stuff too. Just shut down completely. They had to throw out all the food that they just ordered. Throw it in the garbage. Where's all the green people then? You know? So realize what's happening, that when we say this thing isn't about a virus, it really isn't. It's about your psychology. It's about controlling your mind. That's what this is. If you're at the point where you're still doubting that, there's no saving you. You missed it. You missed the whole show. And what do you do? What do you do in the face of it? You find what you can do. I've had to find new ways to supplement my income. And I don't look at it like, oh, well, I just lost my business. I'm screwed. I'm just going to go with my tail between my legs and I'm going to go beg for money from my loving government that has our economy in $1.6 trillion of debt. That's what I'm. Are you kidding me? I'd rather starve. I'd rather go back to hunting and fishing than that. I said, nope. I'm going to find a way to make my show work for me and make my online presence work for me and do it efficiently. Then I start working on my show. All right, let's get more content out there. Let's build it up. Let's turn it into something serious. Let's find a way to monetize it in a fair way where it's a fair medium of exchange. Big tech comes in. No, we don't like what you're saying. You're shut off. You're demonetized. Okay, keep plugging away. Do it for free. No problem. Oh, we don't like what you're saying. We're just completely deleting your account. You know, the average person would crumble and go, I quit. I give up. I'm just going to go get a job, with the police or something, or the new neighborhood watch where they're yanking people off the street who aren't complying, or I'll get money from the government or whatever. The entrepreneur, the spirit, the free person, no, you don't think like that. You're a problem solver. I looked at it. I was pissed. I was upset, but I looked at it like, no, what can I do? What's the solution that I can do that will help me? Even though I've got all these obstacles in front of me. But I look at it like a challenge. I'm like, yes, all right, new challenge in front of me. Then I get a call from Methods. He's talking about Foxhole. He's like, come on the Foxhole. We're building this. These are all the guys that are banding together that have been kicked off these platforms or left of their own will because they were sick of supporting it, and we're making something new. And I'm like, count me in, man. I'm there. And here we are. And I find these other services. Then I get contacted from the owners of Rockfin, have a couple meetings with them. I had originally turned them down, actually, because I was still investigating it, and I was kind of, it wasn't the time. They got back to me as if on cue. I'm sitting there going, I need a solution. I need a solution, something that's going to work. I need to make this work. I need to provide for my family. I need to do my work in a way that is built on integrity, and I need to still have a platform and still have a voice. And then Rockfin calls me up. Love what they're doing. I totally got it. Switched over there, and it's great. They're not censoring anybody. I'm like, okay, I'm with you guys. The minute you start censoring, I'm out. The social media. It was a blessing to get kicked off Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff, because it was just drawing my energy anyways. Now I'm with my wolf pack on Telegram. Got to check me out on Telegram. I love it. Until they're sold out, we'll have to I'll keep moving around. We'll keep moving home bases every time we have to. We will find a way, right? And then just to segue into what I'm going to finish up with, just do a little pitch for my sponsor here, because it's important. And it's really turned into something far bigger. And I'm really happy about that, because I was surfing sponsors. I'm like, what kind of I know there's some good companies out there. I know there's some good people out there. Is there something I can do where it's a win-win? You know, I can share some good products or some good companies or some good alternatives to things. They can help support my show. I started fielding them. I've been looking into them for like 2 years, trying to find good ones. And finally, I get contacted by Sean. He's like, hey, man, check this idea out. We're sick of it. We're creating a band of people that are just going to take all of our money. We found an alternative. It works really well. Come check it out. I gave it a go. This thing's blowing up, guys. This Patriot switch thing, it's blowing up. And it's everything I'm saying it is and more. It's awesome. And it's working out great. And what's the best thing about it is not only does it help support the show, not only is it a good business relationship, it's more than that. It's something that is about the greater vision of helping to bring people to that point where we go, look, some people just need to be shown, here's where you can start. Here's how you start reading the ingredients on the stuff you buy. Start looking into the origins of the companies you support. Start looking for family-owned stuff, small business, or even big business, but that does it right. And then build your relationships there. Clean out your cupboards, switch it up. Switch where you're putting your money. You're putting your money there anyways. Don't break the bank. Take that, put it over here if it resonates with you. And if you don't like my thing, go find another version of it that suits you. In the end, it's about that. Because if we don't start doing this as individuals and voting with our dollars and voting with our energy and voting with our voices, even though the masses are going to try to drag you down, we've already lost. So this is a solution for me. This is a solution that you can implement in your own way. I say we jump ship from these bastards. We get off all their stuff. They created this illusion around us to control it. Look at the media. Why are we even watching it? Why do you even watch Fox News, CNN, any of these things? Unless, of course, you're just doing it for research. Why support it with views? Every view, they get ratings, and those ratings pay them. And then they have, or when I learned, one thing I really loved about talking to Sean there from when I did that show on Patriot Switch, what I really liked about him is he's done his research on who runs the monopolies that provide literally all the products that we buy. It was the same feeling I had when I was looking into the media. You got your 6 major media corporations. You got your now like 11 or 12 major companies that literally own all the shelf space in all the big stores that were allowed to stay open because there's a nice little cozy relationship going on, a little bit of secret handshaking. When the government's like, yeah, we're going to close everything down, these big guys are like, yeah, but not us, right? Not us. And they're like, yeah, not you, man. We're cool. We're solid. You guys go right ahead. Just those little guys, because it kind of works out anyways, magically, for this whole idea of a great reset world feudalism goal. So yeah, kill the small guys, prop the big guys. That's the modus operandi. That's how these orgs work. But they would be out of business if we stopped giving them our money. It's simple. So I'm going on and on, but I'm just going to play a quick little video that a listener of mine, Nicolette, shout out to Nicolette. I hope you're watching. She's been a long-time listener to the show. She had a little testimony to share. She sent me a little video. She said, I wanted to send this to you and feel free to share it. This was my experience with what you're doing. And so I just wanted to show you guys that. I think it was really great. And Nicolette, I greatly appreciate that. Let me just quickly pull this up here for you, and then I'll wrap it up. This is really cool, and it really kind of touched my heart. So it's about 2 minutes. Enjoy.
Since all of the crazy stuff happening with COVID, big tech censorship, and all of just the craziness that has been happening in our world over 2020 and now into 2021, I have been in my heart of hearts just broken thinking that I am contributing to this and what can I do? What can I, as just I'm a mom of 5 kids, I homeschool them, I'm trying to just survive. What can I do to help impact a positive change in this world? And quite honestly, I felt hopeless. My name is Nicolette Moore, and I came across David Whitehead's Truth Warrior podcast. A girlfriend of mine sent him to me, and I really resonated with his message. I resonated with his audience, and I felt like for the first time in many, many years, off of Facebook, off of the toxicity of the other social media platforms, coming across David's content was just like relief. And then to find out about this opportunity to help him, to support his channel, and to help him be able to put food on the table for his family, as well as to continue to get the message out, to continue to bring more patriots to his cause. Whenever I heard that there was an opportunity to do that, I was all in. I didn't even really know him that much. I just knew that I stood for what he stood for. I believed in his message. I believed in his mission. And I'm just a mommy of 5. I just wanted to do something. So I jumped all in. And now it's been incredible because I'm now able to put my money, I'm voting with my money in a more healthy way. Now my money isn't as much as possible, is not going towards these corporations that do not align with my values, I do not believe in, I don't want to support. And so now I have a little bit of that power back. And it's exciting with the Patriot Switch concepts, because I know that the more and more I stick with the Patriot Switch movement, the more that I dive in, I will be open to learning about more opportunities where I can vote with my dollars in a way that feels good, that I feel like I can be proud of. So it's been a really big blessing to be a part of the Patriot Switch movement. So grateful to David for having the voice that he has, and having exposed myself along with many, many other patriots to be able to be deprogrammed from the system. I hope you join us.
Oh, I'm muted. Okay, I'm unmuted. Wow. Nicolette, thank you so much. Thanks to everybody working real hard behind the scenes to make this whole mission possible and to help support this show. It means a lot. And, that's just incredible. We've been having a lot of fun with this. If you want to check it out, what we're doing, this is now my official sponsor project for my show. It's called Patriot Switch. You can check it out at patriotswitch.com/truth warrior. Make sure you add that /truth warrior so they know that I sent you. Check it out. See if it's right for you. It's been awesome for me and the people that have gotten involved with it. I was blown away by the amount of people that jumped on this and volunteered to even help out with it. And we've got a team that's growing over there. It's really cool. So go take a look at that. It helps a lot, and I think it's also going to help you out too. And then we all just keep doing this, one step at a time. This is just one way. There are many ways that we can all learn how to take back our freedom and build something for ourselves. Even if the rest of the world decides to go mad and keep going down this crazy track, we don't have to participate. I kind of looked at it like there's 2 tree houses being built. If you think about when you were kids, one treehouse is this totalitarian monopoly run system, and the other treehouse is the freedom people, the people that don't want to live like that. And as long as you clean your own house, take care of your own house, live with what you value, and you can work with like-minded people or not, it's totally up to you, and reject that other version of things and don't support that and take your energy away from that. Remember, everything's energy. Right? Everything is energy in the end. And that's where we can win this battle. This is a spiritual war. This is a battle for the mind. And all that other stuff is that's the superficial level. So if we get down to the root of it, I think that's where the solution lies. So thanks to everybody for tuning into the show. The number one way you can help me out with this show is to just share this out. If you're on any good groups out there or other pages, if you like anything I'm talking about, please help me get the word out about this show. I have to rebuild my followership again after I got taken off all these platforms. And I also want to bring more people off of those other platforms onto Foxhole, Rumble, all these other platforms as well. Because that's honestly where the real conversation is happening. We can speak freely, and I want to support that. So that's the number one way you can help. Also coming up soon this week, I'm finally getting to it. I've been super busy. I'm going to really zero in next week, actually. Next week, I'm going to start zeroing in on this Cult of the Medics series that I've been kind of holding back for a while and doing the research and trying to think about how I wanted to do it. I think I've got a good template for it. It's going to be coming out soon. I'm imagining it as being 12 episodes, but who knows where it's going to go. There's so much to cover with that subject. If you remember, actually earlier, Michael brought a little bit out about that. So we're going to go through some of that research as well about the history of this Cult of the Medics. Where did it come from? What's it all about? So stay tuned for that. And again, thanks to all of you guys. Much love. We're going to win. Truth wins in the end. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Have a good one, everybody.